A very good evening to all our viewers. Welcome to this edition of the Evening Review. My name is Toiwan Jabela, your host for tonight. Let's have a look at today's front page of Namibian Sun. Tonight on the show, we are joined by Phillip Lühl. He is talking to us from Durban, South Africa, where he is stuck with his newborn twin babies, Maya and Paula. Welcome to the show, Phillip.
Thank you.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of commotion as far as your situation is concerned, you and your babies being stuck there in South Africa. What is the substantive facts as to why you are stuck in South Africa?
So the twins were born here through surrogacy, which is a process that is legislated in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And so we are both fathers are not South African citizens, and so the twins do not have automatic rights to South African citizenship. And because we currently live in Namibia, unlike when we started the process where we were living in Cape Town, bringing our families there, we essentially need to come back to Namibia for the twins to be able to apply for citizenship by descent there, based on the court order and the birth certificate that identifies the two of us as the legal fathers of the children, on the basis of which they would have the right to Namibian citizenship by descent. And so it is the same case as with our firstborn, Yona, who was born 2 years ago, and for whom we, followed that exact same process. So we got emergency travel documents from the Namibian Embassy, High Commission in Pretoria, traveled to Namibia, and then applied for his citizenship by descent. And that was denied by Home Affairs with the request that a DNA test is required to see if there is a genetic link to me as a Namibian father, because only then Home Affairs would issue issue the citizenship certificate to our son, and that we contested because we believe that we followed due legal process. We provided official South African documents that, under normal circumstances, Namibia always recognizes, which is a valid birth certificate, and even the court order that stipulates that we are, from the day of birth, we are the parents of these children. And so that is where we started to disagree with, essentially with Home Affairs. And that case has been pending in the High Court ever since April. Yeah, the application was done in April 2019. So, and currently we're made to believe that we understand that the hearing is only on going to be in August. So now, in anticipation of our twins, of the birth of our twins, we had reached out to Home Affairs to say, we know that, knowing that the substantial case about citizenship is still pending, please issue, our twins with emergency travel certificates so that, again, we can bring them to Namibia, where we will await the outcome of the court case to then take, whatever appropriate action is required, depending on the judgment of the court. And that request was denied by Home Affairs, which, we find very surprising, because essentially that would mean that I would, am supposed to stay in South Africa until August and be separated from my husband and my child in Windhoek. So, that is essentially what the issue is about.
Thank you for the elaborate response there, Philip. Where do you think the problem is? Is it a question of Namibia not having enough legal tools to rely on, or is it, or do you subscribe this behavior to something else?
Clearly, Namibia is lacking in its legal frameworks with regards to families compared to other parts of the world. I mean, the legal framework that we have that criminalizes, for example, sex between men, consensual sex between men is those are colonial era laws that are still on our statutes, and so these laws, even though they are not applied, nobody has been persecuted under those laws, but they do have real implications. Everybody will remember that, for example, the Ministry of Health is not allowed to issue or to hand out condoms in prisons, because that would be supposedly contributing to unlawful acts, which is sex between men. So, there are real implications, and our case is one of such implications, where people are being impacted, people's lives are being impacted. So that's the one thing. And the other thing is that after, due to various factors, have, good reasons to believe that, our situation has really become a sort of issue of outright discrimination against us because we are of the same sex, and that has to do with the sort of entirety of how not only the cases of our children, but also the case of my husband and his resident status in Namibia has been dealt with over the past 2 or 3 years. So that really is why we believe that this is a case of discrimination, not just simply a case of not having legal instruments to deal with this.
Yeah, and so in that case, then, Philip, do you think how do you think Home Affairs and the entire government of Namibia should deal with your situation when there is seemingly a gap in terms of legislation? We look at the situation of Paula and Maya, innocent children, as everybody's saying, but there are another school of thought is that if you do not follow the existing law, you might be violating the provisions. What do you say to that?
So the issue is really that this is in a way the result of just a kind of very complex story that of our lives, which is that while we were based in Namibia since 2011, my partner has been doing a PhD at the University of Cape Town, and simultaneously, from 2012 onwards, myself, I have also done a PhD at another university, but I used some of my sabbatical leave from NUST to be able to spend prolonged periods of time in Cape Town with my partner, because we really were focusing on our studies there. We bought a property there, and so we were literally living between Namibia and South Africa, and because of our marriage being recognized there, and us having set up foot in South Africa, we were able to then start this process of surrogacy, and we were not sure of how the kind of legal landscape in Namibia would be, and that is why South Africa has been and still is a second home to us, really, because we know that here we would be protected. Nevertheless, I believe I'm a Namibian citizen. We have legal instruments that are in place. We acknowledge any other South African birth certificate. We acknowledge the parentage of any other South African birth certificate. Never has Home Affairs asked anybody to provide DNA proof that the people mentioned on a birth certificate are in fact the parents. So we might be surprised if we would be doing that with so-called normal parents, to find that maybe not all the children are the genetic children of the parents that claim to be the parents. So that is simply something that is not enshrined in our laws. But there are certain processes that lead to children and parents being recognized, and simply because we are two men, Home Affairs is now rejecting a South African birth certificate and a South African court order, which make it very clear that we are the parents of these children, from the day of their birth.
Yeah. I spoke to the Minister of Home Affairs, Frans Kapofi, yesterday myself, about your situation. Of course, there's an article in Namibian Sun quoting or citing what he said. He was saying that his argument was that he called it a new phenomenon, where children, the entry of children birthed by same-sex parents was actually flagged or brought to their ministry. And he is trying to say that, because to your point of saying it hasn't happened before, his argument is that it has always been between heterosexual parents, if you like, and therefore this one is a new phenomenon, and they have no legal tools to deal with it, and then the only way to deal with it is through determination of DNA heritage. What do you say to that argument?
Well, we say to that there is no law that provides the need for DNA to be the basis of acknowledging parentage. Otherwise, adopted children could never be the recognized children of somebody, because there is no DNA link. And while we appreciate that this might be a first for Home Affairs to consider, there is a pending legal case before the court, which is our firstborn son. Unfortunately, because the justice system in Namibia is extremely slow, that case is now pending for about 2 years, and it's only about to be heard in August. And that's exactly the reason why we said, let's be proactive, let's engage Home Affairs and say, let us bring these twins, these 1-week-old babies, back to the country, and let us await the outcome of the court, and then we deal with whatever the consequences of that are, right? Because it is really the courts, of course, that must pronounce themselves in this matter, and to essentially bring sort of answers as to how to deal with this. But what we find irresponsible on behalf of Home Affairs is to simply not grant us, to enter the country. So they, I don't know, are expecting us to now remain, for me and the twins to remain in South Africa, while my husband and my first, born 2-year-old son is in Namibia, to remain there for months, apart. And I mean, who in their right mind would do that to a family, right? So that is really the issue, and that to us really shows that there is no consideration for us as a family. There is no consideration for our rights, for our humanity to be acknowledged, and and that's really where we have, like I said before, we have very strong grounds to believe that the underlying sort of reason is discrimination of us as a same-sex couple. And of course, there are so many other cases where same-sex couples in this country have lacked protection, going as far as the recent review of the Gender-Based Violence Act, where Parliament directed that there was specifically made a provision that this does not include, that partnerships, the definition of partnerships does not include same-sex partnerships, which means Parliament is saying we're going to protect people against domestic violence, but we're not going to protect people who are in same-sex relationships against domestic violence. Imagine that. So here we are making explicit laws that are explicitly discriminating in 2021. No longer do we just rely on just outdated colonial laws that are still on our books. We are making new laws that specifically exclude citizens from protection of the law, and that is absolutely absolutely against any sort of constitutional principles, against the dream of a free and equal Namibia that only 2 days ago everybody was celebrating. It's just simply not true. We have people in this country, citizens, that are treated as unequal, and that's a reality, and that's something that we believe our case is just one of many cases where this inequality and this discrimination is plays out in real life.
Okay, the final question to you, Philip, is then especially that you are living in that space, you are living that exclusion in real life. Are you party to any sort of movement that is advocating for the complete overhaul of the country's laws to recognize persons like yourself, or are you simply fighting for yourself in this case, but not in a broader sense, so that we do not have similar cases going forward?
So we have, in all our years, living in Namibia, we have never experienced any adverse, experiences where we were discriminated against, or where we were abused, or where anybody had anything to say about us, being a couple and living together and being a family, right? And that includes our employer, the NUS, the Namibia University of Science and Technology. It includes our medical aid. It includes our banks. Everybody, treats us as a family, as spouses, and as it should be. And this case of Home Affairs is literally the first time that we experience discrimination, and that to some extent has previously allowed us to simply do our work, to contribute to society, myself as a lecturer, my partner as a researcher, and somebody who pushes and advances issues around housing and informal settlements. And so we never felt that there was an immediate need to make this sort of LGBTQ activism the sort of core of our identity, because it is not the core of our identity. We have multiple identities, and this is just one part of it. But clearly, and I think this has happened to so many others, we have faced a moment now where we just simply cannot afford to not become part of a wider movement, to make sure that future generations and our children and everybody has equal rights, has fully equal rights to exist and to love who they want to love, and to set up established families that that provide a caring environment for children. So that's why we, this is really a sort of a struggle that was, if you like, forced on us. And we can only acknowledge the amazing work that has been done by activists, since many, many years, in terms of advancing rights, advancing, women's rights, advancing gender equality. And we hope that, with this issue and highlighting, this our case, that we can make a contribution to that ongoing struggle, which literally has been, going on since independence.
Philip, thanks a lot for your time. We really appreciate your time and also for sharing your story with us and the Namibian viewers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is Phillip Lühl. He is the father of two Namibian twin daughters stuck in South Africa currently because the Namibian immigration authorities would not allow them into Namibia without certain conditions being met, such as the fathers producing DNA tests of the babies to link them to this country. I hope this has given you a better perspective of the situation, like we now do. Thank you for watching.